Those of us here on this program believe that the Arizona Diamondbacks will be sellers at the deadline. We've believed it for a couple of weeks now, that this team is firmly in the camp of needing to sell ahead of the 2025 deadline. They have not been able to make up the ground and show enough to warrant maybe holding off for a little bit, maybe trying to see if this team can make a run in August and September. That is the position of this program. The Arizona Diamondbacks need to be sellers ahead of this deadline. So with that being our North Star, what would allow us to classify this deadline coming up in 16 days from now as a successful one for the Arizona Diamondbacks? Is it a certain number of players that are brought back? Is it certain positions that are checked off the checklist? Is it a philosophical success, meaning that it just looks like it's going in the right direction? What is it that marks this as a successful deadline? Yesterday, we said Mike Hazen needs to meet the moment. As an executive, as a manager, as a coach, working in sports, not every day is like this, but there are some tentpole moments where you have to show up in a big way. You want to be classified as one of the best executives, one of the best GMs. You want to be put in the bucket as the great of greats when it comes to coaching or managing. There are certain times where you have to meet the moment. Yesterday, we outlined why this is a moment that needs to be met by Mike Hazen. And meeting that moment for me is not landing 3 or 4 top 100 prospects. It's not landing a certain number of a team's top 10 prospects when they move Eugenio Suarez, or if they trade Zach Gallen, or in a Josh Naylor trade. It is not the specific information about the position that the player plays or them being a top 5 prospect in a farm system. That stuff is important. That stuff is going to matter. But what is going to define for me whether or not Mike Hazen met this moment and whether or not this is a successful offseason for the Arizona Diamondbacks comes down to one specific North Star. When we do the next show after the trade deadline, Producer Evan, July 31st, the trade deadline. What day of the week is that? I can't say that I've looked that far into my future. I barely know what the date is for tomorrow, let alone what day of the week the 31st is. I could probably do the math, but
it's Thursday.
So we will have a show on Friday after the trade deadline. We will get off the air on Thursday just as the trade deadline is ending. So we'll get 24 hours to think about it. We'll let our heads hit the pillow. We'll get a good night's rest. And then we'll wake up potentially with the same opinion, but a more composed opinion about what the Diamondbacks did at the deadline. And we will come in here that Friday, at least I will, and define this as a successful deadline if Mike Hazen makes me feel on that Friday that the Diamondbacks are well suited to compete in 2026, that they got back the prospects that are close enough to contributing at the big league level where I can sit here and forecast a world where the core that remains can contribute, the young players that they both have in their system and that will acquire into their system will be able to contribute, and a free agency move here or a free agency move there can put this team right back in a position. You cannot go into next offseason. If you trade Eugenio Suarez, if you trade Josh Naylor, if you trade one pitcher, if you trade an outfielder, we'll get to that in hour number 2 of the program, you could walk in to next offseason needing a first baseman, needing a third baseman, potentially. I'm not giving up, just saying potentially. A first baseman, a third baseman, an outfielder, 3 starters, a completely brand new bullpen, right? That's the laundry list. That's what the Diamondbacks the grocery list. That's what they would need to go and shop for, right? No organization can do all of that in one offseason. It's impossible. So to me, a successful offseason is getting a successful trade deadline is getting a jump on those things. You get through this deadline, okay, our starting third baseman next year, Jordan Lawler. We got back a prospect that we think could be our starting first baseman next year. Or we have a prospect in the minor league system that's going to be ready in 2026 to be our first baseman. We got back a starter that's close to the big league level that could be a part of our second half of the year rotation so he can get some big league innings and then is ready to be a mainstay in our rotation in 2026. See, there are a lot of people out there that are punting on 2026. A lot of people saying that the next time this team's really, truly going to be able to contribute is 2027. And I am not willing to accept that. I am not willing to accept that in this marketplace when I think if they trade Eugenio Suarez, if they trade Josh Naylor, if they trade one of their pitchers, if they choose to trade an outfielder or two, I think they can reposition themselves. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's going to be a younger, more inexperienced group. There's going to be some growing pains. But I believe that they can put together a roster in 2026 that maybe on paper isn't as talented as the 2025 group, but a group that could be in the mix for a wild card spot. That is how I will define a successful offseason. If Mike Hazen gets back a bunch of prospects that aren't going to be ready until 2027 or 2028, and I can't put together the pieces of the puzzle to field a competitive roster without doing a whole lot in the offseason, then it's not as successful. I am not willing to kick the can down the road on 2026. I am not ready to give up on 2026. Why? Because they can make 2026 matter by admitting 2025 didn't work, admitting that we need to shed some salary, admitting that we can retool this thing on the fly. There's going to be some people that are upset, but we're going to trade Naylor. We're going to trade Suarez. We're going to trade a pitcher. We're going to get back some pieces, and we're going to be a younger group, but we're going to have players that are really talented on this roster in 2026. We are not going to punt on 2026. Could it be a bit of a transitional year? Sure. But a competitive year? Absolutely. That to me is successful. That to me is Mike Hazen met the moment for the squad.
You have to set yourself up for next year, the year after that. Understand you have a core that's ready to win now. You have 4 to 5 guys that are ready to win now. And listen, you're going to get reinforcements at the end of 2026. I know that's a hard thing to understand because they're coming back from Tommy John. But in a year's time, they might be getting some serious reinforcements.
If they have some young position players in their system that could contribute by 2027, but they also have some holes that they can fill for 2026. So put yourself in a position to where 2026 is not a lost year. Is it going to carry the expectations of 2024, 2025? No, absolutely not. 2025, this team had deep NL playoff run aspirations. Those are not the expectations that we're going to put on next season. But can you be competitive? Can you be a team that is in a position to buy at the deadline? You're telling me that the Arizona Diamondbacks can't put themselves in a position to be the St. Louis Cardinals of this year? Look at where the Cardinals are in the standings. Nobody thought that team was going to be a buyer at the deadline. They were trying to trade Nolan Arenado in the offseason. They lost Paul Goldschmidt in free agency. This team is in the middle of a playoff race. Probably going to be a buyer at the deadline. You're telling me that the Arizona Diamondbacks, by getting a jump start on their offseason with this trade deadline, getting some pieces that are close, getting some pieces that will contribute in 2026, and then attacking the little needs here and there in the offseason, they can't field a roster that is the St. Louis Cardinals of this year? I'm not willing to give up on years of baseball fandom the way some other people are. I'm not willing to say, oh, it's just trade the farm, get rid of everybody. 2027 is the year. Listen, if they call about Ketel Marte, I am not willing to accept that as a fate. Do not give up on 2026 before we even get there.